Well, I think we better call the meeting in order before this wound turns serious.
I know, right?
Butterfly strap.
But I will call the planning commission meeting to order. It's time. Thank you for coming tonight. Just to review how things work here. So this body is advisory. And what we will do tonight is make a recommendation to the Community Development Committee, which meets at 5 p.m. on July 11th. And they will then make a recommendation to the City Council, which meets the next night on July 12th. But I will tell you that both groups take the recommendations we make very seriously, and it's unusual for one of our recommendations to be overturned. So just be aware of that. So the way it'll work then is we'll start on each item with a presentation by staff, followed by questions of staff, and staff is Larry here. Comments from the audience, so people will have a chance to talk about the issue, then questions of on the presentations, a motion, discussion, and a vote. So with that, I'm going to move on to the first item on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on June 13th, 2022. Any comments on that? Any changes we need to make? If
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Sean.
Second?
And a second. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion on that. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. So with that, I'm going to open up the first public hearing, which is consideration to a non-conforming use expansion permit to enlarge a non-conforming storage shed by 24 square feet and to raise the sidewall height from 8 feet to 9 feet and grant a variance to allow a 3-foot side yard setback at 517 North Shore Drive. Larry, presentation,
Okay.
please.
This is a non-conforming use expansion permit, but it also requires a variance because part of the building is 2 feet shorter than what his finished building is going to be. Part of his existing storage building is 14 by 12, and he's going to add 2 feet onto that, and that part is within 3 feet of the side lot line, so he needs a variance for that little bit. I think it makes sense for him to redo the building into one structure, and this variance makes sense. So basically, with the 5 conditions that are listed, or the 5 requirements that are listed, I'm recommending approval, and I'll read through those 5 items. First, the variance is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, as it will allow an accessory use common to other structures in the area. 2, the variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as it is a residential use in a residential district, and again, similar to other structures in the area. 3, the proposal will put the property to use in a reasonable manner, as it will allow the garage in the existing location that already doesn't meet the side yard setback requirements. They would be constructing the garage as one large 16 by 36 addition, or 16 by 36 building, expanding the attached shed portion by 2 feet in width. They're also enlarging the height by 1 foot. This proposal will allow the maximum use of yard space, and the garage and attached shed were built in 1976 and 1970. The circumstances are unique to the property, as the property is a twin home and shares a common driveway with a lakefront property owner, as well as common area with the restrictive covenants. The garage and attached shed, again, were built in 1976 and 1970 on a separate parcel, and there's not a whole lot of space in the common area and shared driveway. So if he had to shift this over to meet the setback requirements, it would make it difficult for people to have circulation in that area. And finally, the variance will maintain the essential character of the neighborhood, as the proposed garage location is similar to others in the neighborhood and will essentially share the same dimensions as the existing structure, notwithstanding the minimal expansion of the attached shed portion. It's really a 24 square foot addition. So with that, I recommend approval.
Okay, questions for Larry?
Any comments from neighbors?
Nothing.
Anyone here to talk about this issue tonight? And could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Patrick Bakken, 517 North Shore Drive. I'm the applicant in this matter. All my the immediate neighbors are all on board. The people on the right, Belva and Bill Strand, they're on board. They're fine. They understand that it's tight in there. I know you might be looking at that map and like, oh my God, it's right, basically almost right on the property line. But I mean, they understand that it existed there, back in the 1970s, before I was even born.
Oh, please.
So it's nothing to my, circumstances that are out of my control, but yeah, I mean, it's, and I'm only asking to basically expand that shed portion by 24 square feet. So even though this is technically an expansion, I think it's a reasonable expansion, and it needs to be redone, and my neighbors are on board with it, so that was the main thing. For them, I wanted to make sure that they were okay with it and they were fine with it, so if you have any other questions, I'm here to respond.
Always a good idea to talk to the neighbors about these projects. It tends to smooth things over. So.
Correct.
Yep, okay, questions for
That's
Patrick?
probably one of the reasons I didn't get any calls or comments on this.
Yeah, they want to see it.
Yeah. Any questions for Patrick or Larry on this?
I have a question. So the existing building is 14 wide on one end and 16 on the other. Is that right?
Yes.
And then, because it's kind of two buildings?
Correct, there's
Sort of a garage with a shed on the end?
Yep, the shed, the detached shed was built first. According to my tax statements, it was built in 1970. And then the garage was added in 1976, and they just made it a little wider. So basically, yeah, I'm just expanding that shed portion to line up with the garage to make it one giant, or one big.
Yeah, I was confused because the hand-drawn ones are the existing, not what it's going to be.
Yeah, this is the existing.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're good, I think, so.
Thank
All
you.
right, with that, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny.
Make a motion to approve.
A motion and a second, further discussion. Only gonna state that I'm gonna vote for this in spite of our relative age being brought into it. Anyway, so.
Makes you feel better, I was alive in the 70s.
Yeah, so,
Just
yeah, barely. Anyway, any serious comments on this? So, okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'm gonna call the vote on this. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, so that will be our recommendation to the CDC. So we'll close that public hearing and move on to item B, which is open that hearing to give consideration to a variance to allow an 18-foot 7-inch side yard setback instead of the 20-foot side yard setback on a corner lot at 807 Whitetail Lane. Larry?
Okay, this is an interesting dilemma. We usually don't like to see variances on new construction, but this is a new project that's going in. And as you can see by the survey, one of the corner is 18.74 feet from the side lot line. It's supposed to be 20, so they're off by about 16 inches. And a couple of things happened. One is that the property isn't at a 90-degree angle. It's a little bit steeper angle, so that put them off a little bit. The house also got built a little bit further back than was originally intended, so that aggravated the situation as well. Our building official measured and approved the sidewall setback. Our code compliance official also measured and made an error in the measurement and improved that setback. So construction continued. Everybody thought it was okay. For some reason, when they checked it later, they found the error, and we had the builder stop building. But I am recommending approval of a variance for the setback, because this variation from our 20-foot side yard setback is way, way back from the intersection, and the purpose for that setback is so that we have a clear sight distance at the corner. So this variance won't affect that. Most people aren't going to even notice that there's been a variance. I think it makes sense to do it. Cost alone isn't supposed to be a reason for granting a variance, but in this case, the cost for correcting that minimum little setback issue would be quite significant. And the city also has been involved in measuring and is certainly part of the error in this situation. So consideration should be given to this variance. The variance is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, as the encroachment into the side yard setback is 100 feet or more away from the intersection and will not impede sight lines at the intersection. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposal will also put the property to use in a reasonable manner, as it will allow a setback that is over 93% of the required setback. Circumstances are unique to the property, as lot corners are not 90-degree corners. The property marker in the northwest corner was moved about 6 feet from its correct location, which also caused the footing in the southwest corner to be built about 16 inches too close to the curb. And finally, the variance will maintain the essential character of the neighborhood, as the yard setback will be altered by 16 inches in the southwest corner of the building. And as I said, once it's up, I don't think people will notice the difference between 18 feet 7 inches and 20 feet.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Questions for Larry? You care to comment on this? Anything you want to add? Okay, you don't have to.
I think Larry said it very well.
All right, thank you. All right, so hearing no further questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion for approval or denial.
I would make a motion to approve the variance requested.
Thank you, Nancy. Second? And a second. So I have, and this is time for discussion, I have a couple things, and I would note, as Larry did, the odd shape of the lot here. Most people do want to square up their house with the front of the lot, and I think that certainly makes sense. And then, of course, thank you, Larry, for noting that the city staff did measure this and came up with, you know, the right amount in the first place, and it turned out not to be. It happened. So I think, given all that, I certainly would support.
Well, I didn't say city staff, I mentioned the two people specifically, so.
Yes, yes, thank you, since you're the only staff here, yes, we didn't go out and measure, yes, thank you.
It's a pretty good sized lot.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
not,
Looks like it, yeah.
it's not a problem, so, all right.
Do those markers get moved very often, or are they?
Oh, it's not unusual, it's not uncommon. They get moved when streets go in, they get moved just because contractors, not necessarily even working on this site, get rambunctious with their equipment, and so things happen.
Or sometimes people playing a practical joke,
Well,
by
that's
the
what-
way, I've seen that happen.
Okay, well, I don't know what kind of joke you would get out of moving that corner lot pin, but whatever.
It happens. Anyway, thank you.
Well, some people think they're funny, but they're not.
Right, probably yours truly right now.
I've been
Anyway.
told that many times.
Anyway, further discussion. Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. So, I expect this will be passed at CDC too, so, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that ends our public hearings. Let's move on to consideration of the final plat of Long Pines Estate, 3rd edition.
Okay, this is a residential subdivision out by Long Lake.
This is, you get the wrong one, this is Lake Forest.
Lake Forest Fourth, whoops, sorry, people.
Long Pine 3rd, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't get it in my packet.
I have it here.
we sent out a new packet with it in, so
Oh,
if you
okay,
didn't
so
get
the
the new
second pack,
packet
okay.
or look at that, then you wouldn't
That's
have
okay.
it.
There you go.
We'll look at it.
Here we go, Long Pine Estates 3rd edition, so we've got 26 lots. There's a bank of lots up on the north end, and then there's another bank of lots further down to the south.
I've got it in the other.
So this will finish out the Long Pine Estates edition. So the main road that goes through there is Longview Drive, and then there'll be a loop that's called, what's it gonna be called? I can't remember the name.
And this is the one with the proposed trail around it too.
Yes, there's a trail.
Yeah. So we just did the preliminary what?
Oh,
Not long ago.
Was that
Not
the
too
preliminary,
long.
or was that like
yeah, we just did the preliminary, I think 3 months ago,
Was
maybe.
it 3 months already?
I don't know.
Right.
Any questions on, comments on
a,
this?
is there any changes from when we did the preliminary?
No changes except that we have a clear indication of where the stormwater ponds need to be and
Okay.
things like that, so. So I'm recommending approval of this plat, subject to the 3 conditions that are listed in the staff report.
I move to approve the plat.
We have a motion and a second, further discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. So that's all of the business, unless somebody has questions on the variance conditional use status report, or if you have anything you want to point out to us, Larry.
Well, there's nothing exciting on the variance or conditional use status report. There is one thing, you guys were talking earlier about short-term rentals, and I have been drafting a short-term rental licensing ordinance. And what we would do then is we would license all of the short-term rentals on an annual basis, and we would have all of those requirements in there that we have for conditional use permits. But then we would not have to approve them as a conditional use permit. And the reason why I think we want to try and get out of that business is that once you've approved a conditional use permit, it's a right that goes with the land and it can continue forever. And it's much more difficult to terminate than a license is. And so I think it would be better if we did it as a license for that reason, and also because if we invite all the public to come and talk about why they don't want a conditional use permit for a short-term rental, and then it meets all the conditions, we have to approve it anyway, so we're getting a reputation of being unconcerned and uncaring about what the residents want. And I don't think that's a good look for the city either. And so it just makes more sense to say, if you meet the requirements, we'll give you a license. If you mess up 3 times within a year, we're gonna take it away from you and not give it to you for 6 months. And I think it just could work better. So I'm going to bring that forward probably at either the July or August meeting. And then we can talk about all those other things that you were talking about do we want to put a cap on how many of these we issue, which is also easier to do with a license, I think. Or I don't know what other things you talked about, but
Lot size,
Well,
potentially.
yeah,
Lot
I know that was
size.
brought up, was
Yeah.
smaller lot size, not, and
I mean, we should look at it anyway, so.
Yeah.
I think because it got brought up, it would be good to have it, that we did
right.
discuss it, yeah.
So
I just think the general public is not aware that an ordinance was passed, and until it hits their own neighborhood,
right.
yeah.
Larry, when is the July meeting? Do you have the date on that?
The 28th.
Oh, good, I'll be here.
You're always here,
I'm
just
not
about,
always here.
just about.
Just-
You're a good attender.
I think it is. a
And
good
we
idea to look
appreciate
at
it.
Licensing versus conditional use.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it, I agree.
Essentially,
because
that's,
some of the ones that we've approved have been sold, they are no longer owned by the same person that
Right.
got it, and,
Right.
or they're inactive, they're not using it. you know,
Right.
and It
So
seems
we
like
can-
a better way to keep
We
track
can
of
go
how many
back
there
in
are.
and, remove their conditional use if they're not using it, but we haven't ever done that.
But if you have a licensing process now, you have a reason to maybe start looking at it too.
Correct.
Easier to police.
well,
I think so,
if they're not using it, they won't come in for the annual license and they'll
right.
remove it.
Well, I have to check with Charlie on whether or not somebody who has a conditional use permit to do that if we can require them to be licensed.
I was actually
I
thinking-
feel like we could, but,
I was actually thinking of the ones moving forward, but yeah.
Right.
If we could do it with the current ones and they're not using it.
Are you
it'd
still
be-
saying rolling it over to a license as long as we've already approved it, or they'd still have to go through the process again?
Well, they
That's
still
what
They
we-
still have to have a license.
They still have to have a license now.
I'm not sure. No, they have to have rental registration, it's
Yeah,
not a
oh,
license.
okay, yeah.
It's
Do they have
not a
to report
license.
annually or something like that? Or
No.
nothing? Okay.
It's when they first get it, then they have to have the inspection and the.
When they first
14,
get it, they
15
would,
things that are-
yeah, they would have to submit a site plan and all the stuff they have to submit for a conditional use permit. It's just going to be,
Basically for like Airbnb or something.
Yep. Right.
Under 30 days.
oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
It's complicated and there's so many different ways that cities regulate it. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion is that there's an ordinance that was passed. What year was that passed?
It's been quite a while.
I don't
Four,
know.
At least 4.
And so there's an
So-
ordinance that drives the requirements around it, and then they come here for a conditional use permit, and we see every one of those. And then we see them coming across, so we all kind of started talking the last couple of times, because it's a rather contentious set of discussions. that
It
to have
can be.
each time.
Well, technically initially, and by the way, I don't know that anybody introduced our new member. Did you introduce our
Oh.
new member?
Hi, sorry.
Well, I mean, I happen to know him, but
Anyway.
technically, when people were doing it, there was no kind of thing in the city, so
Right.
it was illegal. And so
Okay.
we needed to do something to.
Yeah.
I should tell you, we've approved our first chicken permit
Did you?
Again,
on East Shore Drive.
on East Shore Drive.
I thought we had one.
And I just had dinner with the chicken lady last week,
Did you?
Nina Kleinschmidt.
Yep, yep.
I'll let her know.
I thought there was another one, or there was somebody that was putting up a fence
that's
that
why
said
you
they were
never-
gonna have an intent to do it or something, but,
We haven't seen any other applications.
okay.
I've seen
So-
chickens walking in the road on Campbell Avenue and West Avenue.
Oh,
Yeah, see,
I
there was-
believe
I
it.
thought there was one over there that was kind of along where the new
Well,
home street went
they're
around
not-
to get to the frontage
They're
road.
not permitted, so, and we haven't had any complaints, so.
Just Adam tell the deer that are walking through my yard.
I don't think a chicken is gonna last very long on its own. Oh,
Well, I'd like to welcome you, Tyler, to the planning commission.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited. Happens to be a fly on the wall for a while, I suppose. Take it in.
Let me give you a heads up, not all the meetings go this quickly.
Great initiation.
Yeah.
To adjourn.
Thank you. I'm not even gonna ask for a second, I'm just gonna consider it adjourned, so.
I'd like to do an hour, but make sure you block off 2.
Yeah,
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 that's
depends on
exactly
what side, if there's anything involving a variance around the lake, we'll probably